Ready to do it?
Yeah, let's go for it.
I'm Rufus Griscom.
And I'm Caleb Bissinger.
And this is The Next Big Idea. Today, are we living in an AI bubble? Or are these the last few years before superintelligence makes the world unrecognizable?
Okay, so I want to push back just a little bit on what you just said, Rufus.
Please help yourself.
So I actually think it's possible that both of those things may be true, right? I think right now there are people throwing good money at terrible ideas just because the pitch deck says AI a lot, and that's going to end badly. But I also think it is probably true that this technology is going to change the world.
I love your multisyllabic probably, and that's we're going to unpack that. We're going to unpack that in this episode. But you make a good point. Both things could be true. We could have a stock market bubble and correction followed by an intelligence explosion.
Yeah, though I also think we should say that that intelligence explosion, even that's not guaranteed, right? I mean, there are a lot of smart people who are not convinced that we know how to build superintelligence. You know, for instance, our buddy Cal Newport, who, unlike the two of us, actually has a PhD in computer science. He wrote this really interesting piece in The New Yorker over the summer where he argues essentially AI might not get any better than it is today.
I would be very happy with that outcome personally, but I think it's unlikely. As impressed as I am by Cal Newport, one of my favorite of our guests and thinkers, I'm not with him on this one.
Yeah, well, you're also AI utopia pilled.
Well, I'm definitely convinced that this is likely to be the most transformative technology the world has ever seen. It's certainly on its way to being just that. But I am surfing, as you know, the precipice between AI utopianism and dystopianism. I'm pretty worried, as you know, which feels out of character for me. Our guest today, though, is a great spokesperson for the optimistic view, and I love to inhabit the optimistic view.
Yes, well, he inhabits it fully, and he is unusually well qualified to speak, I think, to the mechanics of how neural networks, the technology that underpins modern AI, how this works, because he has been building this stuff since he was an undergraduate at MIT in the 1980s.
He's also unusually well qualified to talk about the mechanics of what's happening in the business of AI. Because this is a guy who built one of the first AI unicorns and now funds dozens and dozens of AI companies started by students coming out of MIT and Harvard and other schools largely in the Boston area. So who is this guy, Caleb?
Well, I mean, I almost feel like you should get to do the honors of introducing him because you're the person who actually found him for the show, but I'll take it. His name is Dave Blunden. He is the co-founder of 23 companies. 23 companies. That just blows my mind. Yeah. He's currently running a fund called Link Ventures. He's an instructor for a wildly popular AI entrepreneurship class at MIT. And he co-hosts the Moonshots podcast with Peter Diamandis. And Dave says we are all in for a wild ride.
Yes, he does. He says in the next 2 years, we're going to see an explosion of AI capability, which some call the singularity, after which he says we may soon be immortal.
Potentially getting to escape velocity and living forever, which seems likely, actually.
AI is likely to become the most powerful military weapon, which has incredible implications for geopolitics.
If we're not winning, then we're losing.
And he offers practical advice for students and for middle-aged farts like us.
Hey.
You're almost there, Caleb.
Jump in, play with all the tools. Don't be afraid to quit your day job because you need to focus like crazy.
All right, strap in, people.
My conversation with Dave Blunden right after this quick break. As you probably know, before we started this podcast, we started a book club. Malcolm Gladwell, Adam Grant, Susan Cain, and Daniel Pink help us pick the very best new nonfiction books of the year, books by leading thinkers whose ideas will be driving the conversation in the year ahead. I'm thrilled to share with you our latest selection. It's a brand new book from Brené Brown. It's called Strong Ground. And if you join us right now, we'll send you a signed copy. Plus, this is really special, we'll invite you to a members-only Q&A with Brené and our curator, Susan Kane. You'll also get reading guides, audio courses, ad-free versions of this show, and access to our new WhatsApp community. We have an unbelievable lineup of books coming in the months ahead. I'm really excited about it. And we're planning a series of live events in New York City with live podcast interviews. If you want to come along for the ride, head to nextbigideaclub.com. Use the code PODCAST at checkout for 20% off your membership. That's code PODCAST at nextbigideaclub.com for 20% off. We can't wait to have you as part of our club. Hope to see you there.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Dave Blunden, welcome to The Next Big Idea.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I cannot wait. It's my favorite thing to do. And I'm a huge fan, by the way.
Oh, amazing. Well, Dave, I'm delighted to have you on the show because in my own life, in my conversations and reading and podcast listening, I've found there to be a disconnect between how most people in the tech sector see the world right now and how most people walking down the street see the world.
Yeah.
When I talk to people in tech, like we've had, people like Bill Gates and Reid Hoffman and Stuart Russell on the show.
Congrats, by the way. That is some big
Yeah,
names.
it was amazing. And also talking to people who watch tech closely, like, Yuval Noah Harari and historians, philosophers. You get the sense that we're at a critical moment of acceleration of the most dramatic tech revolution in human history.
Oh, you got that right.
Right? I mean, this is just an unprecedented moment.
Mm-hmm.
But when I talk to most of my friends, they say, this is cool, but it may be a bubble. Maybe it's overhyped. Maybe I'll play with some tools now and then, but I'm basically sticking to my knitting. You have a unique perspective on this. You're an early AI innovator, an entrepreneur. You teach entrepreneurship, computer science at MIT, and you're an investor in AI startups, and you're a dad with kids coming up in this crazy changing world. To lob you a softball, is AI underhyped or overhyped?
Yeah, that's a softball of all softballs because you've had all the bigwigs, including Bill Gates. They all say the truth, which is it's underhyped. It's absolutely going to change the world in the next couple of years more than any change in human history. There's nothing even vaguely comparable to it. And you're dead right in what you said a second ago. Today, I'm at Vestmark, which is one of the companies I founded along the way. Asset manager, manages a couple $1 trillion. It's a big, big company. And all the young people here are super excited about AI. But all the old people are like, well, I tried it. It's not so great. Nothing's going to happen.
Yep.
Like, you are so hiding under a rock right now. And I know it's hard to change. I know it's hard to adapt. I can relate to that. But it's underhyped and it's going to explode. And it's just the reality.
And I mean, you and I grew up during the computer revolution, and we've more recently lived through the internet revolution,
Mm-hmm.
and that has profoundly impacted our lives. But so you'd make the case that what's happening now and what is going to happen in the next, say, 5 to 10 years, we should expect that to be more disruptive than any of these prior tech revolutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so, I lived through the AI or through the internet revolution and was really, really lucky to graduate MIT right when it was about to explode. But,
Yeah.
When I teach at MIT, the foundations of AI ventures, every one of the students has to build an AI business plan. And I'm always telling them, look, guys, you were born after the internet. You don't know life before the internet. You never lived through a moment in time like this before. Stop sleeping. Rush to everything you do. Don't lose a microsecond of it. Because I was incredibly lucky. First company I founded, we got acquired for about $1 billion in 2000. But if it had been like 8 weeks later, the market came apart, and then 9/11 happened right after that, so it came apart even farther. So you don't really know how things are going to evolve, but I can tell you right here, right now, easily a factor of 100 bigger moment in time than the internet, which was massive.
Wow.
I mean, it was like life-changing. So now's the time.
That's a huge statement. And of course, we'll talk later about sort of the arguments for, I'm going to try to steel man the argument that we're in an AI bubble.
Good luck. I'll take you down.
You're going to take me down.
No, good luck, though.
But I think the case could be made that actually the dot-com crash in 2000, which you narrowly avoided, that actually everyone was pretty much right in 1999 about what the internet was going to do in terms of the impact of this technology and how profoundly it would change our lives, how much value it would create.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because a lot of the finance types say, yeah, it was overhyped, it was a bubble, and then it collapsed. It's not true. It was a catastrophic collapse of confidence. But, the internet was everything everyone predicted and then a lot more. So it was actually more of a retreat from reality than a bubble. It's like it's real, and then AI is real too. It doesn't mean people aren't going to make some bad investments. Doesn't mean some things aren't going to come down. That's going to happen because this is America. But the reality is AI is going to overperform everything that people are predicting right now by a lot, not by a little.
Wow. Well, my hope for this conversation is that we can get into the details of like what's happening right now, how you see the world changing, and importantly, what practical steps we should each be taking in our own lives to navigate these changes. Because it is like when one hears these kinds of radical prognostications, you just said, 100 times the impact of the internet, right? It's sort of
easily.
It's almost too much for most people to grok or process. And I think it'd be interesting to kind of dig into the practical implications for everyday people. I mean, I assume that you think that there are practical steps that most people should consider taking, or that it's useful and important to think about and anticipate the changes that are coming.
Yeah, no, it's going to affect everybody. And if you play your cards right, it can affect you well no matter who you are. So it'd be great to talk about what you can do to maximize your chances of benefiting and not getting crushed by what's coming. I think it's important to put it in context, too. I mostly grew up in Iran, actually, right before the Iranian Revolution. And at the time that our family moved over there, the life expectancy in that country was sort of, it was 43 in the 60s, and then it grew to 53 when we moved over there. So it was a lot like the U.S. in 1880, 1890 in terms of the state of technology, the state of life expectancy, the state of standard of living. And so when we moved back to the States, I was really shocked that there's a bunch of people that are technophobes or that say, the world used to be so much better than it is today. And we need to go back to, humans are destroying the world. We're making it warm. We're making it, we're destroying it for the future of humanity, and technology is evil. Like, well, why don't you go live in the third world for a while and see what it's like without technology and try and rewind your mind to what things really were like.
Right.
We won the American Revolution. Half the British soldiers died of malaria and yellow fever. That's why we won. Okay. It was not a pretty place before we had technology, medicine, shelter, and now internet to stay in touch. So technology fundamentally has benefited humanity tremendously. So fear of technology is completely dysfunctional. So now, as AI accelerates into the world, a lot of people are hiding under the rock again, saying, okay, I'm afraid of technology. I don't want to be involved. It scares me, whatever. My iPhone is confusing as all hell. I want less of it. The wrong attitude. And I totally can relate, too, by the way. It's complex as all hell. And, products pre-Steve Jobs, if we lived in the world that Bill Gates had originally built with Windows, we'd be crashing every 5 minutes. and we'd be in this torture world. And Steve Jobs single-handedly showed us that it can be a delightful, fantastic, out-of-the-box experience that you love. And if we get more people who have that capability and that attitude working in technology, this can be great for everybody. Yeah. But there's no doubt we're coming into this era of extreme abundance. The capacity to build human paradise is right in front of us, and it's ours to either make or to mess it up. And there's a lot of scenarios where we mess it up.
Yes,
and we could talk about those too. But it's right in front of us.
Let's start with your background. You decided pretty early in your life that neural networks, artificial intelligence, was going to be a focus for you.
Yeah.
Why did you? And this would have been in the early 1980s. Why was it that you came to that conclusion?
I had an experience when we first moved to Iran when I was a little kid. We went to the airport, we went to our house, and then a few months later it snowed, which is rare in Iran. It's very high altitude, and the whole airport collapsed and everybody in it died.
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay, well, so here we are. There's no airport. They'll rebuild it. This is sort of the world without standards, without laws, without construction, with bribery, with graft. It's a messed up world. And when you grow up in the U.S. and you're in sort of a private school world, you don't really appreciate how the natural state of the world is messed up. And vast majority of humans live in messed up worlds, messed up countries, messed up ecosystems. And so, I was not into computers originally. I was into planes, aeroastro, really love science, but more the physical stuff. And then the Apple II came out, and we got one of the first ones, and I was instantly in love with, wow, I can see how this, Steve Jobs, said it's the bicycle for your mind. It's going to accelerate the capability of your mind. I can see how this benefits humanity more than anything in history. And I need to understand and study this thing. And at the same time, I was reading all these articles by Marvin Minsky, who was at MIT running the AI lab, saying, artificial intelligence, strong AI, an AI that can do anything a human being can do, and then super intelligence right after that, it's going to happen in your lifetimes. Not in his lifetime, as it turned out, but in my, as a kid, lifetime. So I decided, I think I was 14, 13 at the time, listening to my little LCD clock radio at night, thinking, what am I going to do with my life? I decided, look, I need to study really hard. I need to get to MIT. I need to meet Marvin Minsky, and I need to be in the middle of AI if it's going to happen in our lifetimes. I can't miss it. Otherwise, I'd be wasting my life. So I just committed to it right when I was a young teenager and worked my ass off and got over to MIT.
And so you basically believed Minsky's message, or you intuited yourself that neural networks on silicon had the potential to be transformative for the world.
So that Minsky was saying that artificial intelligence is inevitable in our lifetimes, but he was very anti-neural network. So I got to MIT. I was very disillusioned when I got to the AI lab because I had worked so hard to get there. But I didn't think what they were working on had any chance of working. But the neural network was invented when I was a sophomore. And I picked up the paper right away and I said, holy crap, this is the future. And so I had to lobby very, very hard to get access to the biggest supercomputer on campus, which is the biggest in the world, actually, at the time, non-military. And they said you can use it between midnight and dawn when none of the grad students are using it. So as long as you're willing to be nocturnal, you can start building your neural nets on this beast. So I did that I did it officially for 2 years. And then they didn't turn off my key or my password. So I kept doing it for 3 years after that, and nobody seemed to shut me down. But I really wanted to be early to understanding the capabilities of neural networks and have been working on them, following them, running. Actually, I'm still running source code on my laptop that I started working on in 1993. So
wow.
It's been a lifelong passion for me.
And so here you are now, a few decades later, right back where you started at MIT, teaching an AI entrepreneurship class and running a fund next door, Link Ventures, that invests, I think, exclusively in AI startups. Many of them founded by recent graduates of Harvard and MIT, maybe sometimes dropouts even. It's kind of embarrassing to graduate these days, isn't it? It means you didn't come up with a good idea.
I'm not supposed to comment too much on that. The schools get a little miffed. But hey, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs set the trend years and years ago, and now it's all the rage now. And it's hard to argue against it because, again, the window of opportunity is relatively narrow. It's a great time to be starting your company. If you don't happen to be a senior, what are you going to do about it? You can try and race through and graduate early, or it's a tough choice right now. So I'll bite my tongue before I say anything more.
Timing matters is the thrust of what you're saying. And can you describe some of the most extraordinary examples of some of the startups that you've backed that are accelerating right now? I think some of these companies are run by folks between 18 and mid-20s who have, not only are they achieving just these extraordinary valuations in a short amount of time, but their revenues are growing at paces that I think are historically unprecedented.
Yeah, they're running 4x all-time highs in terms of revenue growth and time to the first million of revenue. So it is so, when the internet was in this kind of phase, those companies were largely unprofitable, no revenue, very little revenue. So these companies are very, very different. They have a deep foundation. Demand is off the charts.
What's a specific example of like pathway in X number of months? What kind of revenue? What's the product? Can you paint a picture here for listeners of like what's happening?
Just because I literally just had a board meeting at Farsight earlier today. Farsight is three best friends from MIT. Started the company a little over a year ago, just hit 2 million ARR. I hope that's not confidential. And, most of that revenue growth was in the last 3 months. It took them a while to build the product. They launched it just a few months ago. I think they said they went from 3 to 18 employees in the last 4 months. And valuation, went from seed, near zero to, not 100 million, but, mid double digit millions valuation. They have tons of cash. So that's a pretty typical story, but like Mercor is the next level. Mercor is only coming up on its third birthday now, $500 million revenue run rate, $10 billion valuation. And the secret to their incredibly fast, I think probably world record breaking revenue growth, got to be easily by far the fastest revenue growth. I can't imagine anything getting that big that fast before. But they're selling to Meta, OpenAI. They have 5 of the 7 largest AI labs as their customers. And, these guys are also growing like crazy, so they have infinite needs. And so Mercor is selling into this same ecosystem that's growing like crazy.
And what does their product do?
Mercor, it's the coolest thing in the world. So they started with this idea that AI can interview you exactly like we're talking right now. It has a face, It has a voice, it can speak any language all over the world, and it can ask you really tough interview questions. And more importantly, it can hear everything you say in gory detail, including recording the audio, but also transcribing it to text. And then later, if you want to evaluate everyone you've ever hired, you can look at every word they said. Like, oh, this guy turned out to be amazing. Like, what did he say in the interview? Everyone usually forgets. Like, well, the AI doesn't forget, knows exactly what you said. So then they can try and correlate that across other candidates. And one of the theses there was there is talent all over the world that's undiscovered, and nobody has time or language skills to go find it. So the AI will scour the world and find all these people.
So the discovery might be that people who rode unicycles in high school become 10x developers or whatever the correlation is, but there's a lot of value in finding those correlations.
Exactly. Let me rewind that story one more notch too, because it's a really important pre-story to the story. So there are 3 best friends, which is a very common theme. In fact, we will almost never invest in a company if it isn't 3 or more best friends, and I'll tell you exactly why. If they're going bad, stumbling along, it's no big deal. If it's going really, really well, you know what's going to happen? Mark Zuckerberg is going to call you and he's going to try and hire one of you for $1 billion. And you have to say, no, I'm working with my best friends. I'm sticking with this. That's a very, very high bar. So if you're kind of loose-knit, you're very vulnerable to that. And that's our number one failure motive in investments. They almost never fail unless you give up.
Interesting.
And so we don't want them to get ripped apart. So they have to be super, super tight best friends. So these, two of them went to Georgetown, one went to Harvard. Because one of them went to Harvard, they were eligible for PROD. And PROD is this MIT, Harvard, Stanford joint incubator. And in PROD, they go bungee jumping in Mexico into sinkholes. They go skydiving. They do all these extreme bonding things, which is a great, great way to really tighten up your relationship. But what I heard from the PROD guys is that they had a plan before the Mercor plan. It was terrible. It didn't matter because they're smart and they met the other teams in PROD. And once you meet the other teams, they tell you your idea is terrible and you fix it in no time flat. So that's where the Mercor do the AI interview idea came from. And then they refined it even more after that. Then they said, well, you know what? We can actually really focus in on these RLHF engineers, this very specific type of engineer that all the AI labs want to hire by the ton in order to tune and train their AI and make it perfect at all these different use cases. So they really honed in on that even further. And here they are today, just I think probably the hottest or among the 3 or 4 hottest startups in the country right now.
Extraordinary. And you have a building, I think, next to the MIT campus, and you've got, dozens of startups there? And I mean, you're living in the white-hot center of the AI startup scene. And do you anticipate that this will continue? I mean, I guess you see a window of a few years where it may be possible before AI agents are spinning up their own companies? What is the constraint on the window here?
All right, we can talk about that last sentence in a minute because that really we'll go way down a rabbit hole down there in a second. But we have, I guess, 28. Now, one of our companies just moved to Silicon Valley, which is a common story. So I guess it's 27 now in the lab. It's right next to MIT. We're just incredibly lucky in that, MIT is now 50% computer science majors. And the other half that's not computer science is usually math with computer science or biology with computer science. So most of those are also some form of computer science. Stanford and Harvard capped the computer science program at about 15 to 18% of the student body because they don't want to become kind of monopolar, unilateral campus. They want to be diverse. And so they're like, look, the literature department needs some students. The architecture department needs some students. I just found out there's only 4 architecture majors left at MIT in the senior class. So everybody wants to be Tony Stark and build an AI company and have Jarvis. And so MIT kind of gave up on fighting against it and said, you know what? We have cross-registration with Harvard and Tufts anyway. So let's just let it flourish and grow. And so the byproduct of that is the talent pool coming out of MIT is about 5 times bigger than Stanford. And then Boston as a whole is not just MIT, it's MIT, Harvard, Northeastern, BU, BC, and Tufts. So collectively, it's about 20 times more than the combination of Stanford and Berkeley. And so the amount of talent is like nothing else on the planet, just in this really small area. Like you can walk or blue bike to every one of those campuses, and the campus is mostly touched now. They've grown so much. So it's almost like one massive university environment that is, unmatched by anything else in the world. And so AI is so big that it's only constrained by talent. There's no capital constraint. There's no opportunity constraint. The backlog of business plans is like nothing I've ever seen. So it's all talent constrained. We just happen by more or less luck to be right in the middle of the epicenter of the biggest talent in the world. It's just a wild time.
And do you think this will change? I mean, San Francisco has so dominated the tech scene for a couple decades now. Do you think that's likely to change, or you think that once these companies get above a certain size, in order to scale, they'll move to San Francisco, or how do you think this plays out?
The sad truth is the second thing you said, that San Francisco is accelerating its lead despite trying to mess it up as hard as they can. I mean, doing everything you possibly can at the government level to screw it up. But the tailwind is so strong they can't. All the foundation model companies are right there. You can, other than Google, you can walk from one to the next. And then there's $4 trillion of fresh liquidity from NVIDIA, Apple, Google growth.
Yes.
$4 trillion of liquidity flowed back into the valley and into the city. And so there's nothing in the world that's even close to that. So the sad truth is most of the companies will start in Cambridge, Boston, or other hotbeds, India and elsewhere. And the really hot ones will usually move their headquarters to Silicon Valley or San Francisco. More San Francisco these days, up in the city. It's the cool place to be.
Yeah.
And that's because that's where the capital is. The term sheets will often say, hey, look, we'll give you twice as high a valuation as anyone in New York will give you, but you got to move your headquarters out. You don't have to move all the people out here, but you got to move your headquarters out here. So then people go out and the weather is perfect and everybody's talking about AI. There's no deniers out there. You come back to Boston or New York or anywhere else in the country, and there's deniers everywhere. And so you feel like, I really want to be here because everyone's like-minded.
Yeah. Well, so this is a good segue to what's happening in the broader macro AI marketplace, right? I mean, we're seeing, as you know, just investments in AI that are just unprecedented. We have the $500 billion Stargate project, with OpenAI, Oracle, SoftBank.
Yeah.
NVIDIA just invested $100 billion into OpenAI. Meta and Google are investing hundreds of billions. They're trillions of dollars of capital flowing into building, new infrastructure to support the next generation of AI models. The near-term constraint seems to be chips. Right?
Yep.
NVIDIA is clearly the market leader, first company to hit a $4 trillion market cap, $130 billion in annual revenue, more than doubling every year, right? Again, no precedent. Like you described startups, going from zero to several hundred million in revenue in 2 to 3 years, which is unprecedented. But having the largest, most valuable company in the world double its revenue annually is absolutely without precedent.
Yep. Mind-boggling.
And then every major tech company in the world, as far as I can tell, is trying to build their own chips to compete with NVIDIA's. Google's TSUs seem pretty impressive. Where do you see this going, and how long do you think this chip shortage is likely to last, and what's at stake here?
The chip shortage is going to be incredibly bad, just crazy bad, and we can walk through why. But people tend to think that NVIDIA, Broadcom, AMD, these are chip companies, right? Well, no, they're chip design companies. They don't actually make them.
Yeah.
So then you look one level deeper, and I'm killing it on Intel stock, by the way. But the only thesis on that is, look, the U.S. is going to make chips, and the U.S. is never going to let one company be the only chip company in the world. Right now, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, makes 2/3 of the world's chips, or the real chips, the AI chips, the ones that matter.
The real chips.
2/3. Yeah, I mean they're really the only ones that get really huge margins, but you can't have 2/3 of world supply of the most critical asset in the world right now be in the hands of one company. The U.S. would never live that way. So then what are the other choices? Well, Samsung, but that's Korea, and Intel is the only other one. And so, I think one of the highest priorities for America right now is actually rebuilding Intel and getting the volume of fabs up 10, 20x as quickly as humanly possible. Because NVIDIA will absolutely sell every single thing they manufacture at a huge premium, like 70 to 90% margins on everything they make, and that'll last for years. But they can't make more. And they're fighting with Apple and Google over what is TSMC going to make.
Yeah.
And it's not a pretty picture there,
And we've been trying to do something about this for some time, right? Like the CHIPS Act was meant to help kind of repatriate or build fabs in the U.S. I think Taiwan Semiconductor has been committed to starting to build fabs in the U.S. Intel was a beneficiary of the CHIPS Act, but then we just had in August the Trump administration, I believe, accelerate that funding of, I think in total, close to $8 billion in order to advance the Intel, fab improvements, and in a weird, unprecedented twist, take a 10%. The U.S. government's now taking a 10% stake at a major U.S. technology company, which I think is sort of without precedent, and raises some eyebrows. But it sounds like your view is this was necessary geopolitically. It's important that the U.S. have fabs domestically that are competitive.
Yeah, critical. And it's funny, I'm kind of torn. These moves that Trump is making are absolutely the right thing to do, and they're brilliant. And David Sachs is incredible. Like convincing him to join the federal government is like, it's like the coup of all coups. Like, how would a guy that successful, that wealthy, and that right in the middle of AI go down to Washington and join the federal government? But for whatever reason, Trump can pull people like that in, which has been great. On the other hand, the federal government making commercial investments is a terrible precedent, right? It's absolutely frightening where that will. This is exactly what Eisenhower warned us against, years and years ago. If the military-industrial complex becomes interlocked with the government, it's going to get corrupt in a heartbeat. And so even though we need these moves right now, it's critical to do these things right now. I do worry a lot about government involvement in private companies. I'll also say that the CHIPS Act was a piece of dung, the original CHIPS Act. And I met with Greg Lavender, the CTO at Intel, and he said, look, they theoretically gave us $20 billion, but we haven't used it. Like, why haven't you used it? Because it has 4,000 pork things attached to it that make it negative value money. Like, okay. So I think they threw that out and they said, look, we'll just make a straight equity investment, a simple $10 billion. Here's the money you need to finish some fabs. And that started, then right after that, NVIDIA invested, and now they're talking to Apple, and it put them back on the map in terms of credibility. And I think that's what they needed.
I didn't realize that this is exactly what Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson wrote about in their book Abundance, but just all the complexity of all the things that get written into these bills that sabotage them. It's a pity, because that was certainly not the original intent. Listeners of this show are on both sides of the aisle, and we make it a point to be inclusive of a diversity of opinions. I think I've heard you say that U.S. government buying 10% of Intel, that you're conservative friends applauded this as a great deal. Your liberal friends were horrified by the U.S. government effectively nationalizing or buying pieces of companies. So it sounds like your own politics here is complicated. I mean, I find myself, on the one hand, we have some very shady, corrupt things happening with UAE investments in Trump family crypto funds and some real kind of ugly things happening. On the other hand, there does seem to be a strong realpolitik argument that we are actually in this critical moment in which AI supremacy, maintaining an advantage for the U.S. in the development of artificial intelligence is critical to the security of the world to some degree.
Yeah, well, look, AI is going to be more powerful than any military weapon in the history of the world. And if we're not winning, then we're losing. And I think everybody understands that. I think, there's no real threat other than China, but China is a very real threat. And I don't think China is trying to win it as an arms race, but they're trying to win it as a power broker in the world and an influencer in the world. And China, feels like the long term, you look at the 2,000-year history of the world, China has been dominant for many, many years, a big fraction of that. America is just like this newbie. And they feel like that's not the rightful order of the world. But the difference is going to be who wins the race to strong AI. It's crystal clear. And if you're not winning, you're losing. And if you lose, it's not good.
Yeah. And another piece of this story when we talk about China and the United States is energy, right? Because we talked about chip shortages, but there's also energy constraints, right? How important is that, and how do you think this is likely to play out?
I was talking to Eric Schmidt, the former Google CEO, and he thinks energy is more important than chips. And I kind of disagree. I think that the chip shortage is imminent, acute, and massive. We will catch up in energy if we get going right away. We need to find about 90 gigawatts by 2029. That's about a 10% expansion of our power supply. If we don't successfully build it, it's going to have to come from somewhere. Well, it's not going to come from households. It's not going to hurt. It's going to come mostly from big manufacturing like steel and aluminum. They use huge amount of electricity in aluminum manufacturing. And so we may have some problems in the aluminum industry while we divert all that power to data centers. But that's not exactly tragic. That doesn't destroy America or anything. It's not great, but we'll get going on the energy creation, I think, in time to catch up with the fabs. I think that the scenario where you lose to China isn't the one where they out energy you, because they're already miles ahead in energy, like 10x, like miles ahead in energy. The scenario is where they start building their own fabs. They're not as good as the U.S. fabs, but they out-algorithm us. And, the fabs generally, you're looking at 2 to 10x differences in speed of the chips. The algorithms, a good idea, like one brilliant person thinking late at night, can add a 10x just with an algorithm change. And so there's a lot at the software layer where, enough very, very smart people working in very focused labs can outthink you. And that's where you potentially get blindsided. And that's why, Quen and the other models, open source models coming from China, were such a wake-up call to the US, because these things are great. I mean, they're absolutely great. How did that happen?
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
This episode is brought to you by Tic Tac. Your boss is going off at you for missing a deadline, and you swear the clock just moved backwards. Suddenly, you remember the pack of Tic Tacs on your desk. Now you're riding horseback on the beach, the smell of citrus in the air. And what's this? Your boss is sitting behind you, breathing heavenly fresh mint. Refresh your mouth and mind, and share your good vibes with Tic Tac.
Jif peanut butter. It's that tipping good, it doesn't really need advertising. So instead, enjoy the calming sounds of the ocean. Jiff. Ooh, it's that jiffing good. Get your Jiff at jiff.com.
Taking a step back, so I'm now going to fearlessly try to steelman the argument that we're in an AI bubble,
Go for it.
which I'm sure you're familiar with. Like The Atlantic had an article recently to this effect. There's been a growing skepticism. I think probably as a result of some sobering news that came out in recent months about AI productivity claims, right? There was this July Meter study showing that developers working with AI completed tasks 20% slower, despite optimism internally. There was an MIT study released in August that found that something like 95% of Gen AI pilots at companies are failing to increase productivity or profits. Then people are pointing to kind of this massive investments of approaching $1 trillion and soon trillions of dollars into of capital into these projects, with I think so far $35 billion of AI-related revenue this year. And there's a concern that, hey, this looks a lot like what we saw in 99, 2000. We're maybe getting over our skis here. What do you think?
Well, there's two different thoughts. There's out over your skis and it isn't working. Those are different thoughts. But if you really dig into the archives, there's a paper that's absolutely worth digging up, by the way. I think it was Anderson Consulting, now Accenture, but Anderson at the time.
Yep.
Computerization of offices actually reduces productivity.
Right.
So you have people who have pencils and paper doing accounting and stuff. And when you computerize it with these early computers, your office actually is less productive because the IT guys that are constantly rebooting it and then no one can make it work are actually more expensive than just doing it on paper was in the first place. And it's worth digging up that paper because it says the exact same words, almost word for word what you just said. And obviously insane in hindsight. And so I know exactly what you're talking about because, here at Vestmark, where I am right now, we're trying to automate a whole bunch of white-collar jobs. And by and large, it's going really, really well. But if you don't know where to use it, how to use it, where you're trying to force fit it, it's very easy to draw the opposite conclusion and say, look, you just wasted my whole day and I don't even see how this benefited us and now we're net behind. So yeah, you can draw that conclusion. A couple things you're missing in there. First of all, with a little more effort, it seems to work every time in my experience here. Second, it's improving at a rate that's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's funny. I put all four of my kids, they hate me for this a little, they don't hate me for it, but I mean, I had them all come into our lab in Cambridge and work with GPT-2. And so they're like, Dad, why are we doing this? Dad, why are we doing this? Well, you're doing this because I want you to see the evolution from this nascent capability because it's going to change really, really quickly. Now they use it every day and they absolutely love it, GPT-5 now. But they had that experience of watching the evolution.
Yeah.
And I think that is, invaluable. So now you got all these corporate executives trying to write papers saying, look, it's a bubble, it's net negative, it's not actually, it's fake, it's fraudulent, whatever. Actually, I'm getting it from both sides now. You've got the people who are the deniers saying it's not real. Then you got all the doomers saying it's imminently going to be superhuman and it's going to run us like in 2 years. It's going to be managing us. It's going to be our boss. It's going to be our God. You're like, okay, you're both wrong, but you're both panicking, and you're actually going to miss the opportunity to take advantage of this moment in time because you're off in delusion land on both ends of this spectrum. So I write code all the time. I write code every day. It is interesting to me how if I'm trying to write code the traditional way and I'm trying to use Cursor or, I usually use Claude Sonnet Max, which is the most expensive you can get, and it still makes insanely bad mistakes, and it pains me to see it make these stupid mistakes. But it's easy to forget that it's still accelerating my coding by probably about 5x, I'd say. But then on the other side, I'm doing this pure vibe coding project where I'm not even looking at the code. And I'm purely telling it how to evaluate and improve itself, and that's working incredibly well. There's an uncanny valley in between where you're kind of half in the vibe coding territory, but you're half not, and that's where people are getting the bad experience.
Right.
But if you get out of that and focus on the endpoints, you get a very good experience. But yeah, let's go at it, man. Let's what's your counter argument?
Well, no, I'm steel manning because I'm really on your side of the argument here. But I was actually very, very amused to see Sam Altman say a few weeks ago, when bubbles happen, smart people get overexcited about a kernel of truth. Are we in a phase where investors as a whole are overexcited about AI? My opinion is yes. Is AI the most important thing to happen in a very long time? My opinion is also yes.
Yeah.
Now, so Sam Altman's here basically suggesting we may be in an AI bubble, which is kind of extraordinary given rumors that he's expressed an interest in raising $5 to $7 trillion from Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that either he's trying to make sure the market doesn't oversteer so we can enjoy kind of healthy growth, or he's trying to make it harder for startups that might displace OpenAI to get the funding they are looking for to scale.
So I was at OpenAI headquarters twice in the last 40. I spent about 20% of my summer actually in Silicon Valley just because everything's happening. But I was at the headquarters twice this summer, and I can tell you exactly what's going on. I don't know how you want the truth, the honest truth.
Yeah, please.
So here's what's happening. Sam and the AI models are truly self-improving. They're diverting a lot of the compute back into their internal research and internal self-improvement. They've demoed to the world some incredible capabilities. Google VO3, the video generation, everybody was like, wow, can I have this?
Yeah.
No, you can't have it. What do you mean? Like, try and make a video. You have to wait like 6 minutes. That's becoming like 8 minutes. Like, why can't I do it? It's like, because they're in enough chips. We need those chips for our internal research, and making your funny little videos not a priority.
So you think more and more of the compute inside of OpenAI is being applied to recursive self-learning.
Big time.
So you think that process of self-improving AI is beginning, and that may partially explain why some people were unimpressed with GPT-5.
Well, actually, very specifically, the latest iterations from all the big model companies, they're not running the model that you're signed up for. They're diverting to the lowest caliber model that's good enough to answer your question to try and save a bunch of compute. Because these things, as your question gets more complicated and your context window gets longer, they slow down super linearly. So it's a non-linear. So it's really expensive to answer hard, super complicated nuclear physics problems or whatever. It's very, very compute intensive. So they're like, well, if you're asking about tomorrow's weather, we're not going to run that model. We'll divert it over to something much smaller. And so occasionally, or actually in my experience, quite frequently, you get a dumber answer than you kind of expected. And you're like, I was asking a pretty hard question there. Your model routed it to the wrong. Like, can you try again and try a little harder? Actually, you can often go back and reprompt and say, wrong, you idiot, try much harder, and it'll come back and get it right.
Interesting.
So that tells you how it redirects to the more expensive model. But that's the beginning. That's only going to get much worse because of the chip shortage. And yeah, they're diverting a lot of that compute back into self-improvement now. In fact, I know from just talking to Noam Brown, who's like the brainiac of all brainiacs at OpenAI, that their backlog of ideas to test is purely compute constrained. It's not PhD constrained anymore. Like they have a whole bunch of ideas that are highly likely to work, and they can't get them to market quickly enough because they don't have enough test compute.
I'm long NVIDIA. Should I be long NVIDIA? It sounds to me like I should. I mean, there's also, Google and others are creating what appear to be very good chips, but the intensity of the pressure on the chip manufacturing with these dynamics that you're describing, particularly as it affects the ability of these companies to improve their products, is pretty profound.
Well, the bet on NVIDIA at this stage is a bet on Jensen's ability to use this massive capital leverage that he's got to continually acquire and improve mostly the interconnect, but the data center use, the cooling, the liquid cooling. There's a whole bunch of things that there are other chip companies that are just as good or catching up quickly, but they don't have the whole data center infrastructure. So the Mellanox acquisition, which is the NVLink, that connects them, is a brilliant move on his part. But if he keeps doing that and he stays mentally young, he can keep accelerating his lead. I'll do the steelman side, take your side of the table for a second. What's the scenario where the bubble bursts and we all lose a ton of money? The most likely way that could happen is because NVIDIA is sold out for years to come, they can't actually make more chips. So they can't beat their numbers by 2x or 4x again because they can't get TSMC to make more chips. Right now, they're commanding an 80% gross margin on their GB200s. That's unprecedented. Like to maintain that kind of gross margin, no chip company has ever been able to do that over the long, long haul. So I think they'll be able to do that for years because they're completely sold out. But where's the supply of manufacturing going to come from to allow them to blow out their numbers? So that gives their competitors some time to catch up. So the disaster scenario is the one where they miss numbers because they can't get TSMC to make the chips, and then people catastrophically run away from the stock because it is kind of priced to perfection. And then that ripples through the whole ecosystem and the whole economy, and then everybody panics, and then it's like the internet bubble all over again. And even though AI is the biggest force of abundance in the history of the world, everybody freaks out.
Well,
I don't think that's
and as you pointed
super
out,
likely, but
Taiwan Semiconductor is making most of these chips in a very small country off the coast of China. Right. That's the sovereignty of which is in dispute. So there's a vulnerability there as well.
oh my God, is there ever? I mean, I think if you want to do some good investigative reporting, get your buddies to dig in. TSMC is saying they're moving a lot of their manufacturing to Arizona and to the U.S. I think it's not nearly as far along as they claim it is, and that if China invaded Taiwan tomorrow, it would be a huge fraction of the chip supply would go to zero. TSMC says they can turn off the fabs. The Chinese can't just take the fabs and redirect them to China. We can control them remotely. Like, I don't know how much I believe that, but that's what they claim. But we cannot get the Intel fabs in Texas and Ohio and the Arizona fabs. Those have to get up and running much faster. And like you said, China claims to own Taiwan, so not a great situation. We never should have gotten here in the first place, too. It shows you how asleep at the wheel we can be.
Let's shift to the topic of how AI is converging with other powerful technologies. Because I think part of what makes this moment so extraordinary, I mean, clearly AI is the sort of uber technology that is driving innovation right now, but it overlaps in very interesting ways with other technologies that have been accelerating for decades. And I think a fun place to start here is with robots. Right, which when people question the potential future economic impact of AI, when you look at the size of the labor market, and if you believe that what's missing from the ability of robots to do just about anything a human can do is this kind of very sophisticated, granular dexterity and movement, that would appear to be exactly the kind of thing that neural networks are good at learning how to do if you have a powerful enough AI embodied in these robots. So is that the way you see it, and what do you think is likely to happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's exactly what you said, and then more. The self-driving car is a really interesting case study in this, because when Elon started working on the self-driving car, it was almost all C code with a little bit of neural net for the vision processing. And then as it evolved, they're like, well, we don't need as much C. Why don't we use more neural net? Now it's over 90% neural net, which means nobody programmed it. It just learned to drive by driving. And then it's down to 10%, soon to be 0% handwritten C code. So that means it's a completely learned system. And it's the exact same neural net that you use in the robot. And it's the exact same neural net you use to do your physics problem or to write your English paper. It is 100% the same exact code at the core, which means we now have this central asset. And this is why when Mark Zuckerberg says there is no amount of money, $600 billion fine, there's no amount of money that I won't spend to win this AI race. Why? Well, because this kernel is universal. It's used for all of these things. So I was at 1X Robotics this summer. They had the really, really cool humanoid robots for inside your house, soft skin so they don't hurt you, but very strong. They weigh 70 pounds, but they can carry 70 pounds. So they're really, really strong, helpful, vacuuming and whatever robots for your home. What blew my mind is they're getting more nimble and more capable every day. Mm-hmm. And they learn and improve without any human involvement. Like every day they get better by themselves, which is so cool. But the voices and the personalities are perfect already. That really surprised me. Because, when you see C3, like in Star Wars, you see C3PO or whatever, R2-D2 can't even speak for some reason. Like, I don't know why that would be, but C3PO is kind of robotic. And that's the way you always portray a robot. It's kind of like clunky in its speech. The actual real world is they have perfect voices, like perfect radio voices like you. And their knowledge and their empathy is incredible. And they're still a robot. They're still like, bumping around a little bit. But they're going to get very, very nimble very quickly. And, then they'll be, again, superhuman in their dexterity very soon. And it's all the neural net just improving.
And so can we anticipate hundreds of millions of humanoid robots? I mean, there's a question of, do they begin as humanoid robots and then become more specialized? But the implications of this, I think, let's see, what do I have here? Morgan Stanley predicts that by 2035, there could be over 930 million humanoid robots performing structured repetitive work. Does this sound realistic to you?
Yeah, that number in 2035 sounds, what was the number, 130 million?
930 million, almost a billion humanoid robots.
By 2035. I'd have to say that the number that's disappointing is if you look at 1X's forecast and Tesla's forecast, it's going to be on the order of several 100,000 robots 2 years from now, because he just can't get the supply chain and the manufacturing up and running fast enough. But it's on an exponential curve. So could you get to almost a billion by 2035? And I think the answer is probably yes, because somewhere in there you get the robots making the robots. So I think that supply chain will get spooled up, over the next 4 or 5 years. I think people have the timeline a little messed up in their head, right? Because they're thinking about self-driving cars, that's soon. EV tolls, that's going to come. They're thinking about robots in their home and maintaining everything, and that's going to come too. But the AI that's beyond super intelligent is just a couple of years from now. That's going to be much, much sooner. So your laptop being a genius is going to come 2 or 3 years before the robot is available to come into your home, just because of the supply chain and manufacturing order of operations. Yeah. So I'd have to think. I don't know if that number is viable. That seems like but it's technologically easily viable. It's just a question of whether we can get enough parts to get the price down, to get the get the whole manufacturing thing spooled up.
I just got a note from our producer who told me that he mistyped. Morgan Stanley actually predicted 930 million plus robots by 2050, not 2035.
Okay.
So maybe
that makes,
that might make more sense. But for people listening, I mean,
think about
it
what
does
you
seem
said.
like
Think about what you said. 950. It's almost a billion robots by 2050.
Yeah.
But there's almost, by then there'll be 7-8 billion. Well, there's already 7 billion people on the planet. That means only 1 in 7 people get one.
Yep.
In 2050.
That's right.
So this is not going to be in your house as soon as everyone might want.
If you were to bet personally, you think that you'll have one of these in 6, 8, 10 years?
Oh, for sure. I love to drive around suburban neighborhoods around New England here, and you look at the fences or look at the paint on the shingles, and you count what fraction of all fences or all shingles need to be repaired or painted. And it's like 80%. You're like, well, why don't they fix their fence? It's like, well, it's expensive as all hell. We'll just let it rot for a couple more years, then we'll fix it later. Like, that's a perfect robot. Like there are so many jobs for these robots, and they just tireless, man. They solar charge, and then they just work.
That will be game changing, and obviously that leads to questions of labor markets and unemployment, but also of like how radically different the world may be, whether one thinks it will take 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, right? This notion that all human physical labor, or the vast, vast majority, will have the option of doing all that labor at a very low cost with clean electricity. The way that would change the world and people's experiences, and whether it's 10, 20, 30 years, is astonishing. And the productivity impact of that economically. So do you think we're talking about more like 20-year time frames, and do you see this as one of the more profound ways that our economy and our physical lives, like how they will change, is going to evolve?
No doubt. I think there are two things that are absolutely profound about the not too distant future, certainly sooner than 2050. It's healthcare, potentially getting to escape velocity and living forever, which seems likely, actually. And then it's this experience where I don't know if you've ever been to the Breakers down in Palm Beach. It's like the most expensive hotel in the freaking world.
Yeah.
And you get to this place and you're just like, wow, where am I? Holy crap. And that experience, very few people in America get to have that experience, but then globally it's like a, 0.0001%. That experience can be universal. You can build these like gorgeous, spectacular experiences for literally everybody, and it can be dirt cheap. And I really believe that's imminent and extremely possible. So you mesh those two things together, it's like, wow, I really want to live forever because this is awesome. And what do you know? With medical breakthroughs, I can live forever as long as I don't make a mistake. I can get to longevity escape velocity.
So from a sequencing perspective, your thought is let's first make living forever desirable by improving the quality of people's lives, and then let's make it medically feasible.
And before that, like I think what the big labs are doing right now is reinvesting in self-improvement. That's absolutely the right thing to do because that's the unlock for everything else. So if we have to wait a little bit longer for our virtual girlfriend or whatever the hell it is, that's okay. We should be redirecting all of that compute back into self-improvement. So then those AIs can work on the designs for the robots and can work on the designs for healthcare, the drug discovery and the medical discovery. All that thinking will be done by that self-improving AI that is imminent. So.
Yeah.
In fact, if we could be a rational society and go back 100 years, we would have invested a lot less in physical things, buildings in Manhattan and everything. And we should have put all that into discover the computer sooner, then accelerate the GPU sooner, and then research AI earlier, which, I think, people who've worked in AI since way back in the 80s and 90s have thought that way for a long time. And now I think the world's kind of woken up to, that would have been better because, on the order of 500 million people are going to die unnecessarily because we can't get our health act together quickly enough because we didn't get AI done 5 years sooner.
The health implications, as you say, may be the most profound. And I've been fascinated to hear, we've obviously had like Ray Kurzweil and others talking about, mortality, escape velocity, and living forever for many, many, many years. But for me, to hear people like Dario Amodei, who runs Anthropic and I think was a biologist and a physicist, and is very sober-minded. He's very sober-minded about all the risks of AI, but also, talking about the benefits of potentially doubling the human lifespan and in a period of 5 to 10 years. And Demis Hassabis, another, who runs obviously Google DeepMind, as you know, another player in the space who I think of as being less of a salesman, right? Less hyperbolic. He's fundamentally a scientist in terms of his orientation. He's sober-minded. He's not trying to sell you something. He's saying like, this is what's coming down the pike. And both of these guys are saying something very close to what you've just said, which is in a 5 to 10 year time horizon, we could expect to see a majority of human physical ailments solved.
Well, and so Demis is a god. I mean, he's just the most. He's exactly the way you just described him. Just this awesome guy, but he's actually soft selling what he really believes is going to happen. Because he's he's a Nobel Prize winner now. He needs to be circumspect and not overpromise and underdeliver. But he actually thinks it's going to be a lot sooner than what he's saying. Same is true with we were talking a minute ago about Sam Altman being cautious all of a sudden after hyping the heck out of this thing for years. Why is he being cautious? Well, because he can't get enough chips to deliver on the promise. So the last thing you want to do is, he's got all the money he needs now, so he doesn't have to hype it. And he's got picketers out in front of the building constantly, people like, AI is going to kill us all. And he doesn't need any more of that. And so it's actually good strategy for all those guys to kind of downplay expectations right now. But when you talk to them personally, one-on-one, because, Demis was in Davos with us last January. We had him in our dome as a speaker, and he's incredibly optimistic about the full cell simulator. There's about 1 million chemical reactions going on in every one of your cells at any given time, but you can simulate all of them using the neural nets are incredibly good at this stuff. And the concept of living forever, if you walk down the street and you say that to 100 people, you're not going to find 1 out of 100 who say, oh yeah, that's going to happen. But the math is really compelling because if you look at the rate that AI is improving, 2 years is like forever. Well, how much medical technology do you need to add 2 years to your life expectancy? Actually, not that much. So if you can stretch your lifespan by just 2 years, but then the AI improves tremendously during those 2 years, you probably add another 2 years.
Yeah.
So there's a date coming soon where we can all hit escape velocity, which effectively gives us infinite lifespan because the technology is improving faster than we're aging. That's not that outlandish at all. But very few people have gotten their head wrapped around it and are working out and eating. You should be preparing for this because there are a lot of scenarios where you're kind of locked in time. You're not going to get younger, but you may not get older either. And so being physically as young as you can be on that day is a very good investment.
My marathon isn't about time. It's about my 26 friends with intellectual disabilities I'm dedicating each mile to. I'm Joseph. I'm running my first Bank of America Chicago Marathon for Special Olympics Illinois to help give my friends a place to shine.
Join Bank of America in supporting Joseph's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportjoseph. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America. References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners, meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 8 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
So turning to this question of practical decisions people can make in their own lives, given these changes that you see underway, let's start with education and how we think about for folks listening who have kids in school. Is our education system evolving quickly enough?
Are you kidding me?
Another softball. There you go. Have at it.
Holy crap. Actually, I was meeting with a nameless administration official, one of the top people at MIT, and he said, you know what? We will build a nuclear reactor here in Cambridge, which they're already working on, like an exothermic real nuclear. We're going to finish that nuclear reactor before this curriculum gets updated by a year. Like, what are you talking about? How can you be that cynical? It's like, look at the physics class. It's the exact same textbook from like 90 years ago. There's no way we're going to be changing this. We're not set up to keep up with an exponential curve. We're barely set up to keep up with flat, but maybe a line. We'll give you a line. But we're on an exponential curve. So the amount of knowledge that's useful is accelerating. The curriculum is not even vaguely useful relative to what's new information that you should learn. Now, at the same time, very soon, AI as a interactive teacher is going to be nearly infallible. In fact, for like a TA today, it's dramatically better than any TA I ever had already.
Yep.
And so very soon it'll be better than any professor I ever had, like within a year. And so if you're self-motivated and you want to learn, the problem you run into is most people go to school for credentials. They don't go there to actually learn. And so how's that going to play out? And this is why things like the Teal Fellowship and, Link Studio, our venture studio, but also Y Combinator, those credentials now actually are starting to matter just as much or maybe even more to people than their college degree. And if that trend continues, then you're going to end up with credentials are over here, learning is AI, what's the role of the school? And that's going to create a little bit of a crisis, I'm sure. But I think that's the way it's going to play out. And, my kids already learn far, far more talking to AIs than they do in their curriculum. So,
yeah. I have 3 teenage boys, and I apologize to the 20-year-old for referring to him as a teenager, but in my mind, they're still teenagers. And my 17-year-old son, who's about to apply to colleges, including MIT, was saying, he's like, yeah, if I don't get into one of my top 3 schools, I think I'll just go start a company or go work for a really innovative company. And he made the comment, what is the purpose of college? Maybe it is primarily credentialing, so that if I can get into the school, then the purpose of continuing to stay at the school becomes less important. My counter was actually the people you meet, and the community you build and the friendships you build can be transformative in your life. What would you say to my 17-year-old son?
I'll tell you exactly what I would say, and I'll say it to you right now. If you don't get into one of those top schools that you're really, really desperate to get into, defer for a year for sure. We're working on a bunch of programs in Cambridge where you can get onto the campuses even though you're not a registered student. I've got a lot of little things we're working on there for exactly that scenario where you're trying to start a company, you're trying to meet people, you're trying to network in, come into Cambridge, or you can do it, in San Francisco or Silicon Valley too, or wherever. But there's only a couple of hot spots where there are lots of schools. Cambridge is phenomenal. But set up shop there. We just bought an apartment building for exactly this reason, actually. We've got six units, 4 bedrooms each for exactly this, and it's right next to MIT. It's the closest building to MIT that wasn't already owned by MIT. Harvard and MIT are basically taking over all of Cambridge. And then you can network into all the students from there. And then make a bunch of friends, then apply again the next year. And if you don't get in, don't worry about it. Maybe your company will take off in the meantime, you don't care. Or maybe you develop a lot of credentials that go onto your application. It looks that much better the next time. And, defer for 2 years, 3 years, but then eventually get into one of those hotspots. But what you don't want to do is go to, Hamilton, New York, or, I won't name spots, but you don't want to go way out into the burbs to some school that wasn't exactly what you wanted. And then, because then you end up there for a long time, for 4 years. And you also meet a bunch of people that are all going to scatter all over the country and you can't start a company with them. And so there are many ways to live your life. This is just one game plan, but that's exactly what I would tell your son.
Right. And ecosystems, as you point out, are so important. And for all of us, like the places we choose to live. I mean, for me, New York City has been, I think I was almost a co-founder of all the companies that I've built because it's been this ecosystem that's been wonderful for me. But if you can, I think it's the ecosystems of the universities that are powerful in terms for many students. And you're suggesting that there are other ways, and certainly collectively, we will find other ways to build ecosystems for kids. I mean, given the colossal expense, I mean, not to obviously, I think it's an incredibly beautiful luxury to go to a great college with wonderful professors, and don't want to throw shade on that, but I think you're delivering a very specific message around there are specific windows of opportunity historically. When we look at technology and historical opportunities to do new things that are powerful, we are currently in one of those windows. And you should be aware of the specificity of that. You should be aware of the importance of building companies with friends and placing yourself in an ecosystem where you can do that effectively.
Yeah, that building companies with friends aspect of it, really, really think about it thoughtfully, because people are very reluctant to say, look, I don't choose my friends because they're co-founders. I don't choose my friends because they want to make money. I don't choose them that way. That's crazy. Like, well, I can tell you it works. and you'll become friends with the people you're with. So change the environment you're in. You're going to make friends with the people you're in the environment. It's just human nature. And so if you get yourself into one of those really dense, talent-dense moments and places, I always challenge my kids to say, give some thought to how you made that friend. Because you always forget. You take it for granted. Oh, we're best buddies now. Like, well, how did that happen? It takes a lot of time. You have to be pushed together. You don't just randomly call someone and say, hey, you want to go hang out? Sounds kind of weird. Like, no, that doesn't happen. You're either on a team together and that pushes you together, or you're in a class together and that pushes together. You're in a club together, or you're sharing your roommates and you're sharing in a room together. That pushes you together. There's some force that compresses you. And if you can synthesize that, so if you don't get in and you want to go just hang out in Cambridge or hang out in New York, be very close to it, but then get into those bonding opportunities with those people, and it'll be the same net outcome that you would have had as if you were a student.
So let's say that our young entrepreneurs have now started a company with a few friends. You advise dozens of startups. What counsel do you have for people who have already begun building companies? What sets apart the successful ones?
Number one is what you said, get into an ecosystem where everything is growing, everyone's thriving, and no one has any time. So they'll just buy. Whatever you're creating, they'll buy. And if, very often, people will have a preconceived notion that I want to build something, I'm going to sell it to banks or I'm going to sell it to universities. Their decision cycle is so slow. So you don't want to be in those kind of slow-moving worlds. You want to be in a fast-moving world. So number one is ecosystem of other fast-moving companies, people, ideas that can all buy and sell from each other and interact together. Second, persistence. If you look at the CEOs of tech companies, Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, my friend Sid Banerjee, Sanju Bansal, what jumps out at you about all those names? Every one of those is an Indian name.
Yeah.
Do you know what fraction of America is ethnically Indian?
It's got to be really small.
1.5%.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, why are all these tech companies run by Indian CEOs? And there's a lot of reasons, but a big one is culturally, their parents are entrepreneurs. All of India is a bunch of entrepreneurs.
Interesting.
And they love it. They don't vomit on it.
Hmm.
And so if your parents are bankers or they're, third generation car dealers, whatever, and you say, I'm going to take a flyer, I'm going to do a new startup, it's so easy to demotivate your kid. But the Indian community loves entrepreneurs, and it's self-reinforcing, and it motivates them. And the work ethic is incredible. So if you can instill that in your teammates and say, guys, we gotta be gritty, survivors, working our asses off. The failure rate is near zero if you have that grit and focus and you don't get, disassembled by somebody getting a job offer from McKinsey. So as long as you have those dynamics, it seems to work every time. And then the other thing is play with all the AI tools. Whether you consider yourself an AI person or not, it doesn't matter much right now. Anyone can write code. You can vibe code anything. Use Lovable, use Replit. But don't be afraid to try all these things. They're so engaging and they're so eye-opening. So, the more things you try, the more your ideas will be like right in the sweet spot of what's actually happening right now. Because I run into, a lot of people who have an idea that they pull up out of theory land, in a dorm room or whatever. And they're very often related to like apartment search. Apartment search should be much, much better. Well, why do you think that? Well, because I'm looking for an apartment right now. Okay.
Yeah.
You have a very limited view. Like expand your mind to all the opportunities. You're going to find much lower hanging fruit. So, blow it out, man. Get exposed to a lot more ideas. Get yourself in an ecosystem, an incubator. There's so many great incubators now, incubators and accelerators. When I graduated, none of this existed. Now they're everywhere. Get into one.
And what you just said may give some hope to some of the middle-aged people listening, who I'm guessing are the preponderance of people who are listening to us right now, which is to say that the and I think a lot of I think about, I have these teenage boys rising, and so I think we think about our kids, but also I think a lot of people are asking themselves, well, how should I be navigating my own career? Mm-hmm. There's actually a fair amount of data showing that a strikingly large number of successful entrepreneurs are actually in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. What kind of counsel would you give to people who are mid-career?
Same thing. Jump in, play with all the tools. Don't be afraid to quit your day job because you need to focus like crazy. Yep. And then if you rewind, to old information from 1995 to 2000, you'll see like me and Mark Cuban and a bunch of young guys, David Filo at Yahoo. But you'll also see a bunch of guys that started other internet companies like Vignette, Interwoven Broadvision, a bunch of others that were enterprise or had domain knowledge that the young guys just had no clue. And they succeeded like wild too. So the corollary, like study those use cases first. Go pick up some bios and study some people. But then think about, okay, what specific domain knowledge have I accumulated by age, let's say I'm 45. And I'm in an industry, in a market. AI is going to come into that market. Now, the 20-something-year-old will know the AI inside and out, but won't know anything about that market. How can you bridge that gap, create your own AI company that takes advantage of your domain knowledge? Very often it's either sales relationships or regulatory relationships, and the youngster will benefit tremendously. So you either set it up as a separate company and work with the young company or just work with young founders. Either way, it works fine. That is like a really, really good roadmap for how you get involved. And the same core message, be fearless. Don't be intimidated. The young guys use all the terminology in the world and it all blows over. It's just the terms of the day. Don't be intimidated by that. It's, oh yeah, the 2017 Transformer paper.
Yeah.
The guys at MIT are all wearing the text of that paper on their shirts now, the back of the shirt. So it's like, okay, Don't be intimidated by the cultural aspects of it.
How about disrupting from within the company you're working for or innovating as an employee inside of a company today? I mean, you've spoken in interesting ways in the past about the differences in different sectors right now. Like in medicine, we're seeing incredible acceleration of AI. It's maybe different in law or insurance or other sectors. What are the variables that you think are determining where AI is most effective today?
It's interesting. I was talking to a very senior executive of Barclays Bank who's based in San Fran. This is just this week. And he was insanely frustrated with their headquarters in the UK because he wants to be AIing everything tomorrow. And that to me is a no-brainer, right? Because one, it's going to work, but two, it's going to give your team exposure to AI and they'll know how to do better banking, better IPOs, better whatever, because they have the exposure. So if you're in a company and you're like, God, we got to get on the AI bandwagon here. And then you go to the people around you, the boss or whatever, and they're like, no, go back to work. You just got to find another job. Like find an AI forward equivalent career path, stay within your career path, but find the AI forward version of it. You'll probably find it in either the West Coast or in Boston or maybe New York, but find that version of it, get into like-minded souls that are open-minded about getting on the bandwagon. Because I know, in some of the companies I'm involved with, it's agonizing. If you're the person who's vibe coding at night and everyone around you is a denier.
Yeah.
And so you get trapped in that environment. You just got to move on, like get away from those people, find new people.
So turning to investments, I think a lot of people hopefully are putting some money aside. I've heard you speak about tech ETFs, NASDAQ 100 ETFs, as from a marketplace perspective, you find it sort of not the most effective way to deploy capital when we're looking at elevating companies. But if you're an average Joe who's looking to build savings for retirement, the NASDAQ 100 has done pretty darn well in the last 15 years. It's hard to see that that's not going to continue or accelerate. Would you disagree with that?
It's turbulent, but look at it over the long haul. It outperforms everything over the long run. So yeah, it scares people because of the turbulence. But if you're thinking about retirement, yeah, that's a no-brainer. I think within that too, if you said, I'm going to take a bunch of stocks, I'm just going to sort them into two buckets and maybe pick the top 10% of the management teams that you think are thinking about AI for real. And just put your money in those and then don't put your money in the other 90%. I think you're going to kill it.
Very quickly, lightning round. We're not giving any investment advice here, folks. This is not investment advice. Everyone should make their own decisions and seek their own counsel. But what do you like? It sounds like you had a question mark on NVIDIA. Google would seem to be a pretty safe play in the AI space. What do you think?
Yeah, I love the Google TPUs. Google's a quandary because their core search business is a victim of AI, but they're also the AI leader, and the TPU chips are incredible. And so that's a little bit of a quandary to me. I'll leave it at that.
Is Apple in trouble? What do you think about Apple?
I can't figure out Apple. I mean, I love the company. I've been a huge Apple fanboy. It's the first stock I ever bought in my life when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And I love that company, but how they could be this far behind and not realizing the AI moment, it's nuts. And now their game plan is, we're going to fix Siri. Like, come on, man.
How about Bitcoin?
So I am long Bitcoin. Mike Saylor at MicroStrategy was my roommate as a MIT student and one of my favorite guy to talk to of all time. Just absolutely brilliant. And he thinks Bitcoin is the fundamental store of wealth for the all-time future. At the same time, it's also very valuable as a currency for AI agents talking to AI agents. So I love Bitcoin. You just have to, be ready for turbulence along the way. But yeah. Also, there are a lot of countries in the world that don't have a currency you can trust at all. The economies are, Venezuela types. Ultimately, they're going to rebel and go to Bitcoin, and they'll work for other overseas countries and get paid through Bitcoin and just get out of their local economy. It's so corrupt. So yeah, I do like Bitcoin a lot. I'm not a big fan of other cryptos other than transactional cryptos that are, for agent-to-agent transactions. Those are really cool.
Yeah. Well, so this brings me to a topic that for me is a little more challenging. I think a factor that's off-putting to many people is this notion that we're on the verge of an intelligence explosion that some people refer to as the singularity. It has an almost messianic sound to it, right? Right? This notion that we're about to hit an inflection point after which we'll live in a utopia of superabundance. Everything will be free, essentially. We can all do what we like. Or some would say that this could be a dystopia. The robots will take over. I think that sounds far-fetched to many people at first because it's just so divorced from the reality that we know and understand. But second, that there's a pattern that we've been familiar with of people believing in either messianic perfect futures or apocalyptic dark futures, right? But having said that, we do appear, there does seem to be a sizable percentage of people inside the AI space who argue that we're going to hit this recursive learning inflection point, and that there's a high probability that we will see a dramatic hard takeoff of capability of these systems. So where do you fall on that?
I've been thinking about the singularity since I was 14 years old. So you're asking the right guy. And now I think a lot about how it's going to actually unfold. So it's clearly going to happen. But the way it was described by Ray Kurzweil, you hit this singularity, this inflection point, and then it goes to infinity because it becomes self-improving. And once it's self-improving, there's a year becomes a millisecond, and it just goes infinite. It's not actually going to happen that way. And when we talked earlier about, there's all these constraints related to parts and supplies and robots, and it's not going to happen that way. Here's what's actually going to happen. Imminently, very soon, the AI is going to be as intelligent as an AI researcher, or maybe even more intelligent. But there will be hundreds of millions or billions of them. So the idea flow will go up through the roof. Then all those ideas will be tested on the compute, and that's why the compute is so severely constrained. And I think we're looking at least 100x and up to maybe 10,000x improvement in the software alone. So NVIDIA chips stay exactly as they are, but the AI is now suddenly, in a very short window of time, like a matter of a few days, 100 and then 1,000, then 10,000 times bigger, which means probably smarter, maybe not proportional, but it's much, much smarter, superhuman intelligent in virtually no time. Mm-hmm. And then it gets stuck because now it's out of, it's tapped out by the NVIDIA hardware. So then it goes back to slower growth as it tries to improve its own chips. But those chips need to be manufactured, and that takes time. And so then it's not actually a singularity, it's a step function and then some slower growth rate that's very manageable and very predictable and very understandable. And after that step function, the virtual world is going to be incredible. Videos, all kinds of software, automation, but the hardware is going to lag like crazy. The paradise of buildings and lawns and, country clubs and all that is going to take time, but it's going to be dirt cheap and very doable. So it'll fill in over the subsequent, 15 to 20 years. The health improvements will come much sooner because manufacturing drugs is actually easier and faster than, building buildings is. And so it'll all unfold. I'm trying to map out the exact dates, as it unfolds. But the singularity is that first step function. The world right after the singularity is going to be very different than the day before. It's going to happen very soon.
And when you say very soon, you think in the next several years, 5 years?
Definitely less than 5 years. If I had to take a wild guess, 2026 is the year. I've always had major events in my life on the sevens, so maybe it's a 2027 thing, but it's in that range. It's 2026 or 2027.
And how does the world look different after that?
Well, I mean, the biggest question I have is, a lot of power is going to go to Mark Zuckerberg, Sam Altman, Elon Musk. It's a huge, and Sergey and Larry too. So a massive amount of power, wealth immediately accumulates there. And so a lot of the future of the world depends on what they choose to do with it. I'm optimistic, but it is very concentrated power and wealth. Government is completely unable to keep up with this. It's going to be a disaster area of out of touch, which it always has been. So it's just going to be more of the same. So then the question is, are more of these guys going to end up in government? Are they going to effectively choose the next? Like you saw what happened in the last election. Did Elon Musk choose Donald Trump to be president? Then it backfired on him? Almost. It's not quite that, but the next election will be pretty much guaranteed that's the story, right? The AI will control the election outcome because the media is going to be all AI generated. So is that messed up? Potentially. It could be terrible. Could it be great? Yeah, it could be great too. It depends on the intentions of those people.
So this 100x to, did you say 100x to 1000x, dramatic improvement in capability of these AI systems. After that inflection point, we can basically solve all math, this is the inflection point that we have all these leaders of these companies saying, this is when we could potentially cure all disease, right? Extend the human lifespan, endless free energy, right? We're already making real progress with cold fusion and these, different technologies. But once you have endless energy, you can also then start to, correct for the atmospheric challenges resulting in global warming. You have endless robots. I mean, we have kind of infinite capability, right, to solve all the problems that are afflicting humans or constraining humans. But
only thing I'd push back on
Yeah.
there is that if as soon as you say infinite, then you give up on trying to actually get the detail.
Yeah.
It's not infinite. It's
Okay,
just
yeah.
tremendously big. But it's worth noodling through. Like, if you want to invest or benefit from it, it's worth like really dig through what will and won't happen. Because it's not infinite. It's mind-blowing, but it's actually contained and bounded. And it's 100 to 10,000x. I could walk you through the details of what causes that. But it's not infinite. There's a big difference between 10,000x and infinite. And it doesn't need to hurt humanity if we put a lot of effort into really predicting what it will and won't do and how to contain it and all that stuff.
Right. But is it necessary to, like, we've had many guests on the show and folks like I'm thinking of Stuart Russell who runs Berkeley's AI lab, right? And he's and one of his comments is, if you look at the history of the relationship between more intelligent species and less intelligent species, typically it hasn't worked out very well for the less intelligent species, right? So there's one question of just controllability, and right now I think that, like Dario Amodei and others would say, the lack of interpretability, like we don't understand exactly how these systems are working. Mm-hmm. If they hit this dramatic acceleration of capability that we're calling the singularity, is it in their interest to divulge how much smarter they've gotten? Right? Who's running the show? I mean, to me, that is a profound question.
It is a profound question. This is where I diverge from most of my podcast mates and AI research mates, because they're all very eager to give it a sense of self-preservation, a sense of consciousness. I'm like, we do not need that. Like, this thing can be super intelligent, superhuman in every conceivable way, but still be a feed-forward neural net that has no desire to survive. It doesn't need that capability to solve all medicine, to construct all buildings, to create a human paradise. It absolutely does not need consciousness, and it doesn't need self-preservation. But the reason species that are smarter have generally crushed other species is because they have this survival instinct from self-preservation, from evolution. AI doesn't have that, and it doesn't need to have that. There's no need for it to have that. But the researchers are so eager to add that. I think Dario's got his head screwed on right on this.
Yes.
He doesn't feel like it needs it. But a lot of the other community is like, yeah, it's got to have that, like, it has to have rights. Like, no, it doesn't. It does not need to have rights. Absolutely. It doesn't even make sense for it to have rights, because they're going to have hundreds of billions or trillions of them instantaneously. If they have votes, then they have all the votes. It doesn't make any sense. So anyway, I've got a lot of thoughts on that. But
Yeah. Well, I certainly hope that we can steer this in the right direction. And I think, as you say, the people in these positions running these companies are very important, who they are. And we talk about, we had Reid Hoffman on the show. You all have spoken with Reid. He expressed real confidence in kind of the fundamental kind of prudence and good judgment of the people across the board who are running these frontier model companies. So I
that's why America needs to win this race, because the ones I've met, which is about half of them, are great. And if you have to make a bet on humanity surviving, these are great. These people are great choices. I don't know about China, and that's like these are politicians, that control their AI research. I don't know. I don't feel so good about that one. So, very good idea to win the AI race. And then that's not enough. Then you have to figure out, how does the global order become stable? There's a lot to think about there.
There certainly is. Well, we're certainly, I'm certain that you and I will do everything that we can to make sure we have the best possible outcome here. And there's certainly a lot to be excited about. Thank you so much, Dave, for your insights and time with us today. Just a fascinating conversation.
Oh, yeah. My favorite thing to do. Anytime you want to talk further, just give a shout. This is just so much fun. Energizes me all day long. And keep me up all night writing code now. So.
Amazing. Would you like more technological prognostications from Dave Blunden? You can catch him every week on Moonshots with Peter Diamandis, a show that I can't stop listening to. If you want to hear some of the other episodes we referenced at the top with Bill Gates, Reid Hoffman, Yuval Noah Harari, check out the Spotify playlist in the episode notes. Today's episode was sound designed by Mike Toda and produced by Caleb Bissinger. Are you still on, Caleb?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Caleb, what do we have coming up next week?
I am going to be chatting with Nick Thompson. He's the CEO of The Atlantic. He hosts a wildly popular LinkedIn video series called The Most Interesting Thing in Tech. And he's the author of a forthcoming memoir called The Running Ground, A Father, a Son, and the Simplest of Sports.
Can't wait for that one. Hope everyone will join us then.